Hello and welcome. Cello here with another review, and today I'll be going over Vampire's Bloodlord Rising. There were quite a few of you who asked me to look into this game, especially since I'm mostly known for making content for another thematically similar game called V Rising. With the names of the two games being so similar, there were many people online who assumed that the games would be very similar in terms of gameplay. After playing all the way through the story progression of the early access of the game, however, I quickly realized that Vampire's Bloodlord Rising is almost nothing like V Rising. Let's get into it. Vampire's Bloodlord Rising is an early access story-driven sandbox RPG with survival crafting elements set in the dark medieval Balkan land of Sangavia. The game was developed by MeHuman Games and published by Toplitz Productions. The game gives you the option of playing solo or co-op with up to 4 players. Originally, this game was supposed to release on October 23rd, 2025, but for whatever reason, it was pushed back to January 30th, 2026. In the game, you play as a vampire named Dragos who has awakened after years of hiding in a coffin, only to find out that the vampire you once served had been defeated by an army of the Inquisition. With no one else to lead the surviving vampires, it's up to you to rally them together and continue the bloodline. Your goal is to return things back to the times where the humans and vampires lived in relative harmony. In the absence of vampires, your enemies have also made enemies of the villagers, since life has gotten worse for them as a result. To continue the bloodline, you start recruiting them by turning them into vampires and having them serve you. As you progress, you unlock new areas to explore and expand your influence. But that's just a brief summary. This game is actually pretty story-focused, which is a big contrast to a game like V Rising, where that game only really has boss descriptions. Whenever a vampire is killed, they leave behind their essence in the form of a vampire tear. As you explore, you'll run into Inquisitors who you can defeat in order to collect and absorb those tears for yourself. As you collect more and more of them, you'll become more powerful and unlock new abilities. So far in the game, you can unlock an AoE blood draining spell, invisibility, the ability to see all living creatures around you and their blood type, as well as the ability to fly. There's also passive skills that you gain over time by performing tasks related to those skills. So for example, if you spend some time crafting, you'll level up your artisan skill, and if you go out collecting and finding items out on your adventures, you'll level up your explorer skill. V Rising, in contrast, doesn't really have a leveling system for your vampire. Instead, you just equip gear and suddenly that is your gear level. In Vampire's Bloodlord Rising, you actually have 2 sets of gear to equip. The set on the left is your aristocrat appearance, and the set on the right is your hunter appearance. So far, I've managed to find 3 ways to improve your gear. You can find some in chests, craft some, and buy some from vendors. Overall, it's pretty straightforward. One of the biggest ways the two games contrast from each other is their approach to combat. V Rising has a very complex combat system with lots of depth and skill expression, whereas this game does not. V Rising's combat system feels more like a MOBA game than it does a traditional ARPG, whereas this game has a more simple and straightforward approach to combat. Vampire's Bloodlord Rising tends to put you in situations where you are managing large crowds of enemies and navigating being outnumbered, which balances being overpowered as a vampire. There's a heavy focus on counterattacks and finishers, as well as opportunities to avoid combat altogether if you so wish. Out of all the things about this game, I felt that the combat was a bit messy at times, not registering hitboxes correctly, and even creating weird animations on finishers. As someone who has played a few rounds of playtests from this game, I definitely see a huge improvement from where it was a few months ago, but it still needs significant polishing. I think maybe a few patches and bug fixes would solve these issues entirely. I'm mentioning this to remind you guys that it is an early access game, meaning that issues like this are expected at this point in development. In my opinion, something that the game does better than V Rising is the servant system. As you explore the different villages, you'll be able to disguise yourself as an aristocrat and talk to the villagers. Through brief conversation, you can find out about the people in the village, acquiring rumors about them. These rumors give you information on their traits, letting you know if there's any specific skills that person is good at. It will also let you know which villagers are disposable, which is helpful when you're looking for a nice snack. You can choose to either feed off of a villager or give them the Kiss of Eternity, which allows you to keep them as a servant. Servants perform tasks for you at your castle, working at various crafting or gathering stations that you assign to them. You can also have them act as guards for your territory, have them fuel the core that holds it all together, or build your castle. The only thing you have to do is give them a coffin to sleep in, and their needs will be met. I also really enjoyed gearing up my servants with outfits and tools, and choosing their assignments through the management screen, which can be done even if you're away from your castle. In contrast, the servants in V Rising just stand around unless they're sent somewhere to gather items for long periods of time, and their only other function is to defend the castle. In this particular case, I feel like Vampires Bloodlord Rising has a lot of the servant functions I wish we had in V Rising. The base building in this game is really nice with lots of furniture and architectural pieces for your castle. As you progress, you unlock more of these pieces, as well as new crafting and gathering stations for your castle. The game does go off of a grid system when placing objects, though you never actually get to see the grid when placing furniture. You can also change the floor and wallpaper colors, which kind of act as a reskin of the base castle. Something that stood out to me was the ability to manually adjust the color of the building pieces. Unfortunately, the preview is a bit buggy, but I can definitely see a lot of potential when this feature is smoothed out. Whatever you build in your castle will most likely be for aesthetics rather than function and strategy, which I really like. The only complaint I have over the building system is that I feel that the cost to build is a bit too high for most pieces, especially when you're first getting started. As someone who wants to start building a castle right away, this is not ideal. That being said, I really like the overall aesthetic of the castle pieces and furniture. I think the best way of explaining the differences between the base building of this game and V Rising is that in this game, it's purely aesthetic and more focused on castle size and appeal, whereas V Rising leans more into the functionality of your castle, though you can just build extra castles for aesthetic purposes. Alright, so what are my thoughts, you ask? If I had to give this game a score, I would give it a 6 out of 10. Even though I had a good time, and there were a lot of fun elements to the game that I enjoyed, it only took me about 6 hours to unlock all of the surrounding areas. I felt that the progression was a little too fast, and that I felt rushed into completing the story before I ever took care of my castle. That being said, I'm still finding things on the map I haven't yet collected and checking out places I haven't yet explored, so maybe there's something I missed. I think the combat of the game is a little too janky to give this game any higher than a 6. In fact, I would have probably given this game a lower score if not for the servant system, which I felt was very nice overall. As someone who has played about 3,500 hours of V Rising, I still managed to enjoy this game despite the jank, lack of sort function, and overall bugginess from time to time. In fact, I would say that if you're looking for another vampire game to try, this one might be a good one to pick up. However, if you are more combat oriented, or if you're looking for a game that is more polished at this moment, I would say it would maybe be best to wait for a few patches to come out and or the game to reach 1.0 before giving it a try. I think Vampires Bloodlord Rising is a very different take on the genre, and I think there's definitely some promising elements to the game. In case you don't know, my name is SholoQ. I stream 3 times a week on Twitch, Kick, and YouTube, and you can find me on various other social media. I have a ton of V Rising related content on the channel, so if you're already playing that game, it might be worth checking out. I also just recently streamed Vampires Bloodlord Rising, so if you would like to watch me play this game, I'll be leaving a link to that at the end of the video. If you like this video, please leave a like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day, and as always, Sholo out.